important cell organelle called lysosome. Okay, see, lysosomes are formed, they are small vesicular organelles, they are formed by breaking off from the Golgi apparatus. Once they are formed by breaking from the Golgi apparatus, they disperse throughout the cytoplasm. Understand? So, coming to the functions of the lysosomes, they provide an intracellular digestive system that allows the cell to digest the following. So, what I'm going to say is they function as a digestive part of the cell. Okay, so what they actually digest: damaged cell structures, food particles that have been ingested by the cell, and unwanted matter such as bacteria. So these are the main three functions of the lysosome. Understand? And coming to the structure, lysosomes are different in various cell type, but are usually 250 to 750 nanometer in diameter. So what is the size? It's 250 to 750 nanometer in diameter, and it is also surrounded by a lipid bilayer membrane and are filled with a large number of small granules, 5 to 8 nanometer in diameter, which are protein aggregates of as many as 40 different hydrolase digestive enzymes. So these lysosome is covered by, it is enveloped by bilipid layer and filled with a large number of small granules. Large number of small granules, which are protein aggregates of as many as 40 different hydrolase digestive enzymes. So here we have seen the function. It will digest the damaged cellular structure, food particles ingested by the cell, and unwanted matter such as bacteria. So how it is going to digest is by these digestive enzymes called hydrolase. Okay, so this hydrolase is a main component of the lysosome. Okay, this one we have to remember. See, this is a lysosome. So here it is showing the different functions. One is intracellular digestion, autophagy. You will see what is autophagy in coming. It helps in cholesterol transport. It helps in antigen presentation, pathogen entry, membrane releasing, bone matrix absorption, and all. Okay, these and all you will understand in the subsequent classes. Okay, now we will talk about the hydrolytic enzyme, because to discuss further about a lysosome we need to know what does a hydrolytic enzyme actually do. It is capable of splitting an organic compound into two or more parts. For example, protein is hydrolyzed to form amino acid, glycogen is hydrolyzed to form glucose, and lipids are hydrolyzed to form fatty acids and glycerol. So here, this hydrolytic enzyme, what does it do? It is capable of splitting an organic compound into two or more parts. For example, protein to amino acids, glycogen to glucose, and lipids to fatty acids and glycerol. Okay, these are hydrolytic enzymes highly concentrated in lysosomes. Okay, the membrane surrounding the lysosome prevents the enclosed hydrolytic enzymes from coming in contact with other substances in the cell, and therefore prevents their digestive reactions. Understand? Here nothing but the lysosomes, which are holding these hydrolytic enzymes in the form of small vesicles, cannot come in contact to other parts of the cell because it is enclosed by lysosome cell membrane. Understand? So that's what they are going to say. However, in some conditions of cell break the membranes of lysosome, allowing the release of digestive enzymes. But in some conditions, what does the cell will break the membranes of the lysosomes, and it will allow the release of these hydrolytic enzymes. Okay, so these enzymes then split the organic substances which may come in contact into the cell, highly diffusible substances such as amino acids and glucose. So this is one of the process occurs in autophagy of any cell. Sometimes what will happen, if the cell has to be died or it has to be regressed, what will happen? The cell itself will tell the lysosome to reduce hydrolytic enzymes by disrupting the membrane of the lysosome. And this once the hydrolyzed enzymes comes in contact with other parts of the cell, all the cell will be destroyed and digested, and it is totally eliminated from the body. Okay, so here we actually consider these lysosomes are also the suicidal bags of the cell, which is a neat bit. So lysosomes are now considered as also a suicidal bags of the cell. Okay, it is also called autophagy because it itself eats the cell where it is residing. Understand? Yeah. Now you see, Lysosomes digest pinocytic and phagocytic foreign substances in the cell. Okay, here you're uh, seeing two words, pinocytic and phagocytic foreign. Pinocytic and phagocytic means they are nothing but engulfing of the foreign material or other things into the cell. Okay, this is a different process which will be explained later. Okay, see what happens after a pinocytic or phagocytic vesicles appear inside a cell. One or more lysosomes become attached to the vesicle and empty their acid hydrolysis to the inside of the vesicle. Thus, a digestive vesicle is formed inside the cell cytoplasm, in which a vesicular hydrolysis begin to hydrolyze the proteins, carbohydrates, lipids, and substances in the vesicle. Here, okay. So, whatever the food particle which is entering into the cell, either after a pinocytic or phagocytic process, this vesicle will come in contact with the lysosome, and this lysosome will release the hydrolysis enzymes into the vesicle. Thus, a digestive vesicle is formed. Once a digestive vesicle is formed in the cytoplasm, this hydrolysis begin hydrolyzing the proteins present in the pinocytic or phagocytic vesicles, and they start releasing into the cytoplasm. Okay, this is how the food is digested in the cell and released into the cytoplasm of the cell to be taken by the different cell organelles. Okay. The products of digestion are small molecules of substances. So, what are the products that are formed after this digestion are amino acids, glucose, and phosphates that can diffuse through the membrane of the vesicle into the cytoplasm, which is left of the digestive vesicle, called the residual body, represents indigestible substances. Once through pinocytic or phagocytic process, vesicles are formed inside the cell. What happens? The lysosomes will come in contact with the vesicles and they fuse and they release the hydrolyzed enzymes into the vesicle, which forms a digestive vesicle. Once in the digestive vesicle, this hydrolyzed glucose, fats, and all these amino acids, glucose are formed and slowly they are released into the cytoplasm. And the remaining substances which are present, which are indigestible, is called the residual body, and it represents the indigestible substances in the cytoplasm. Okay. In most cases, what does residual body is finally excreted to the cell membrane by a process called exocytosis, which is essentially the opposite of endocytosis. Thus, the pinocytic and phagocytic vesicles containing lysosomes can also be called the digestive organs of the cell. So, what happens? The residual body is finally excreted from the cell by a process called exocytosis. Exocytosis means excretion of throwing of the compounds from the cell to the extracellular fluid by a process called as exocytosis. Understand? Yeah. And another important function of the lysosomes which we come across is lysosomes and regression of tissues and autolysis of damaged cells. See, this is a very interesting topic. See, for example, our organs sometimes will start regression. So, what is regression means? See, uterus after pregnancy, the muscles during a long period of inactivity, and in mammary glands at the end of the lactation. See, what happens after delivery? The uterus will start to again regress to its normal size. Understand? And also during muscles when we do exercise, our muscles will start expanding, but once we stop exercises, our muscles will again come to its normal position to a process called as regression. And how, like that, the mammary glands also, once the lactation period is over, the breast of the female will again start to regress and they attain almost to a normal original size before. So this process is called regression, which occurs with the help of lysosomes. So lysosomes are responsible for much of this regression. Another special role of lysosomes is the removal of damaged cells or damaged portions of cells from tissues. So here, other than regression, the lysosomes also helps in removal of damaged cells or damaged portion of cells from the tissues. See how these damaged cells occur. It may be due to by heat, cold, trauma, chemicals, or any other factor induces lysosomes to rupture. Okay. See, Here, the released hydrolysis immediately begin to digest the surrounding organic substances. If the damage is slight, only a portion of the cell is removed and the cell is then repaired. If the damage is severe, the entire cell is digested, a process called autolysis. Here, see, if the cell is damaged, what happens suddenly due to cell is damaged by how it is damaged due to any chemicals or any bacteria or any trauma, what happens suddenly the cell cannot function properly. At that time, what happens that is lysosomes will also release the hydrolysis into the cytoplasm of the cell to digest the entire portion of the cell, which is called as autolysis. Okay. So, if the damage is severe, the entire cell is digested, a process called autolysis. For this only we call lysosomes are also called as suicidal bags of the cell. In this way, cell is completely removed and a new cell of the same type is formed by mitotic reproduction of an adjacent cell to take the place of the old one. This is how the repairing occurs in our body. Once the damaged or worn out cells are removed by the process of autolysis with the help of lysosomes, a new cell is formed from the adjacent of the same type of cell by process called mitotic division, and the old one is replaced by the new one. This process occurs continuously and it helps in maintaining the proper quantity, proper amount of cells in our body. See here we have seen presence of lysosome, this worn out cell content. See, once the lysosome comes and fuses here, what will happen? It leads to degradation of the cell and again a recycling process occurs. So the lysosomes also contain bactericidal agents that can kill phagocytosis bacteria before they cause cellular damage. These agents include the following: lysosomes, which dissolve the bacterial cell wall, and lysoferrin, which binds iron and other substances before they can promote bacterial growth, and acid at pH of about 5.0, which activates the hydrolysis and activates the bacterial metabolic systems. So here what I'm going to say is lysosomes also contain some bactericidal agents. So lysosomes, how the lysosome kills the bacteria is by presence of these bactericidal agents. So what are those? One is lysozyme, which dissolves the bacterial cell wall and kills the bacteria, and also one is lysoferrin, which binds iron and other substances before they can penetrate, before they can promote bacterial growth. Okay, this understand, and acid at pH about 5.0, which activates the hydrolysis and inactivates bacterial metabolic system. So through these three processes, these lysosomes exhibit their bactericidal property and kills the bacteria once it enters the cell. Okay, so these are the structure and important functions of the lysosomes. So the most important things which we have to remember are they are the vesicular organelles formed by the Golgi apparatus present through the cytoplasm. They functions are mostly they remove the damaged cell structure, food particles that have been digested by the cell, and unwanted matter such as bacteria. Okay, the structure is also lipid bilayer covered at about 250 to 750 nanometer in diameter, and it contains a small granules which contains 30 to 40 types of hydrolase adheres to enzymes. So each lysosome contains many small granules which contains hydrolase enzymes. These hydrolase enzymes will digest most of the compounds in the cell which are entered. They split the organic compounds into two or more, like glycogen into glucose, and protein is hydrolyzed to amino acids, and lipids are hydrolyzed to fatty acids and glycerol. Like that, this lysosomes helps in digestion of the food material that is entered into the cell. Okay, and lysosomes digest the pinocytic and phagocytic foreign substances in the cell. That is how we have discussed earlier. Understand? So, and also it helps in regression of the tissues and autolysis of damaged cells. That's why lysosomes are also called as suicidal bags of the body or of the cell. Okay, yeah, thank you for giving this opportunity.